Welcome to another episode of The Next Big Thing, a podcast where we talk about megatrends and exciting innovations changing the world. Now, the AI revolution has made organizations across all industries think, are we utilizing our data as best as possible? Are we employing the right tools to modernize our digital workplace? Are we doing everything we can to be as productive as we can be? We have just the right guest to talk about all of these questions in this episode. I'm Mobeen, Director Macroeconomics and Thematic Research at Wisdom Tree, and today I am joined by Mario Carvajal, Chief Marketing and Chief Strategy Officer at AvePoint, a company that helps customers streamline their digital workplace by providing disciplined and secure data management. Before we begin, however, I do need to state the following. To clarify, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of Wisdom Tree and in this episode, AvePoint, and are subject to change. Anything we present in this episode of this podcast is not intended to be relied upon as a forecast, research, nor as investment or tax advice. The information and opinions expressed in this podcast are not a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any securities, and reliance upon them is at the sole discretion of the viewer. Please remember, past performance is no indication of future results. With that, Mario, somebody once said to me that there are two kinds of people in the world: those who can run the numbers and those who can tell the story. Now, when I came across your profile, it seemed to me that you are someone who has done both. I would love for you to tell us a bit about your background and your career journey that led you to focus on all things data and AI and do what you do at AvePoint. Welcome to the show. Take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Mobeen. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I was very much looking forward to our conversation. It's a very good question you ask, and I'll start with this. I've been very fortunate, or we're very fortunate, to be living through incredible times where in the tech industry there's been so much change. So when you have that opportunity, I think it gives you a chance to really, as you stated, probably see things from different vantage points. Um, the journey I've had has been always in tech. I started, my professional career as a developer. I'm going to probably date myself here as I tell the story, but I started really in a period which was the dot-com era, and it's a period that was marked by rapid growth of the internet, um, web-based businesses, and newfound entrepreneurial spirit. You could even say that this is an era that really was the genesis for digital transformation when we started seeing the commercialization of the web, right? And I, honed my skills in web as a web developer. I learned about networking, e-commerce. It was a lot of fun. I had the privilege of working at a startup on Wall Street, and I was actually forced to learn how to capture requirements, which is really important to your listening skills. Then, of course, personal computing, as you may recall, became mainstream, and software development focused on desktop applications and the operating system and how do you build a really smart desktop application. And businesses started to really rely heavily on client server models. If you recall, and computing power became accessible. So through this time, I learned about on-premise infrastructure. A lot of it was fostering, skills around how do you understand computing systems, and how do you really think about a business application and delivering value to business users. The user experience was a little bit choppy back then. We didn't have a lot of the benefits of the browser experience we have today. So you really needed to think about, how do you really deliver this experience where product can deliver value. During this time, I had the privilege of doing a lot of this work at great firms. I worked at Ernst and Young. I had a nice long consulting gig, and it exposed me to a lot of really interesting projects. And then I was very fortunate to land a full-time gig at KPMG, and I did a lot of work there, really exploring how to build optimal applications, and still in a client server model. And then of course, we had mobile coming next, and the introduction of smartphones was quite interesting. I moved on from KPMG to work at WPP, an incredible organization. And the first thing that I started really understanding was the impact of BlackBerry servers, and the first experience into communication, really in the hands of mobile users. So the mobile platforms really, I think, were fundamental to a lot of what's happening today, which of course back then it radically changed the way users access services and information. So learning about responsive web design, user experience optimization, how do you do that? Um, it was a great period of discovery for me, and I had the opportunity to do a lot of great work in the agencies of WPP's family of companies, building advertising campaigns using a mobile sort of reach. Of course, there I also had a chance to really see enterprise scale architectures. I was operating in a shared IT service model. We were doing a lot of consolidation of the infrastructure so that we can create a seamless experience for employees that were working in different agencies that needed to collaborate on projects. And I had to really think about what's the security boundary when you go across different business domains. And so that's where I first got exposed to a lot of the security principles and also data management principles, and what role technology plays. And then more importantly, how do you do that in a shared services IT model? So by the time we were in the mid 2010s, I'm already working at AvePoint. I left WPP after 7 years there, and at AvePoint, I joined the founding team in late '07, and we were really starting to bootstrap the business by helping companies think about how do you deal with some of the challenges of infrastructure scalability and disaster recovery for enterprise content management systems. So naturally, a lot of the visibility that I had to these large environments at WPP helped me really guide our customers in those early days in how AvePoint could help them. We were building an infrastructure management product mostly for disaster recovery. So that idea of resilience was foundational to what we wanted to solve. How do you make sure there's business continuity? And the goal then was to find the best way to integrate complex systems and constantly address your security challenge and also the continuity of the information or the data. And that's in the DNA of AvePoint. And on a personal level, I've had the profound privilege to learn and grow from the work we do with our customers. I've played several roles here at AvePoint in different, leadership roles. I did some leadership in sales, which was nice. I learned about product market fit and making sure we were building the right things. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to also serve as our CTO during a time where cloud computing really transformed how businesses operate, moving, of course, infrastructure and software all to be online services. So we did a lot of our replatforming of what we had then in the on-premise platforms to build our what today is cloud computing platform. And so my knowledge over the years, I think, has expanded into, to the point you made, Mobeen. It's really given me this very unique vantage point. I'm very grateful for a lot of the teams I've worked with, as well as mentors I've had along the way. But I think I really have a good pulse on what when you see so many waves in your career, you're able to really take a step back and have a better appreciation for what organizations are going through now, which of course is this incredible opportunity with AI, and how do we transform and continue to move forward. So yeah, it's been I've been very grateful and happy that I'm still able to do this work.
You alluded to the origins of AvePoint going back to the early 2000s. And I know technology has come a very long way. The amount of data that we are producing today has completely changed. The connectivity of the world has completely changed and evolved since then. I remember early 2000s. And I might date myself here a little bit as well. I still remember the dial-up internet.
Mm,
The stuff that used to make
little
funny
sound.
noises. But yeah, that
Yeah.
sound never leaves your brain. That those were the days of how the internet started. But of course, if AvePoint has been in business since that time, and we've come a long way technologically, I imagine AvePoint as a business has evolved quite significantly as well. So tell us a little bit about the evolution of AvePoint as a business and what it does today for its customers.
You know, yeah, we started when the concerns were really on-prem. Um, and we were at the front seat of seeing this change to cloud computing. And we knew early on we needed to also make the right pivot. So I think from just the entrepreneurial side of what it takes to build a software business, one thing I'm grateful for is the early decision we made to make sure we were going to go and build this business in a global sort of landscape. So from day one, we decided we're not only going to service customers in the North America, but we're also going to go and see what's happening in EMEA. We're going to go see what's happening in the APAC region, and we're going to learn and grow from those experiences. So the evolution of AppPoint is a combination of both what really happened to us as we were building the product, as a founding team that is all technical, in nature, right? Our CEO TJ has a PhD in data mining. Our chairman, developer as well, and myself and other members of the senior team have perspectives of technology in the technology sector, both in operations as well as creation, right? So there's that aspect of it, but then there's also how we thought about it as business entrepreneurs. Let's be scrappy. Let's listen to our customers. Let's try to iterate and make sure we put the right solution in their hands. If the product doesn't fit the market, don't build it. And so we've sort of used that recipe to reach a global market, and as a result, we went after one of the toughest areas or segments of any market, which is the enterprise customer. So from day one, we wanted to work with large scale companies. We knew that they would push us so that the platform and products we would build could scale. We knew that once we had scale, then we could consider other routes to market to reach a broader market presence. So the evolution, I think, is really about both entrepreneurial perspectives of how do you build a successful software business, but also how do you think about a product line that also needs to evolve and continue. On the product side, we do a lot of design principles for interoperability. I come from, as you heard a little bit of my opening remarks, the enterprise architecture. You need to think about interoperability of any system. So whenever we build apps into our platform, we think immediately interoperable. How do we reuse the discovery of one solution on the other so that the other can actually work faster, right? That type of idea. And so we start early with a lot of infrastructure management, as I mentioned. We build out a product line and portfolio that helps you not only operate and configure the environment, but also serve as a single pane of glass to manage multiple instances of an app. That multiple instance perspective is important because today, if you don't do multi-tenant management, you're not going to be successful. So we did that in the beginning. We then made the right pivots as well as the industry was changing. We were one of the first independent software vendors to build a PaaS on Azure when Microsoft was first really building their view of what Azure could be as a true computing platform. We felt it was appropriate for us to build there because most of the organizations we were working with were already invested in a lot of the technology from the Microsoft space, right? Especially on the Office side, the Office suite of applications. So I think that evolution is what gave us the opportunity to always say it's about the corporate information an organization has, and how do you manage it and how do you maintain it as the applications through which that information is used are always changing, and they have, right? If you think about What Microsoft has done from giving you Office desktop applications to today, they give you just a set of services that are the cloud service infrastructure for you to run your business and be productive and communicate and manage documents and et cetera, et cetera. And you see that they've sort of influenced the space, right? You see organizations today that also will say, I can use Google Workplace because there are some similarities in productivity I get there that I also get from M365, for example. So working in these ecosystems and building a software business from within, I think gives you a lot of perspectives so that what you're building in your product ultimately really drives impact. AvePoint has gone through a lot of that growth by being influenced by what's around us, by the environment, both the ecosystems as well as our customers. And today we are the global leader in data security and governance and resilience. The platform we provide, which is used by most organizations as a single pane of glass to automate governance for unstructured data, which by the way is really hard to do, um, is something that is not easy to build. So a lot of companies will say, "Well, we're trying to build this, but it's hard to build that." And we're proud that today it does service across industry customer demographic. Um, Unstructured data is hard because there's a lot of data silos, and when you try to design security policies and run them across your data, um, it's just not easy to do. So we do that from an application stack that is a cloud centric, and we've designed it for security leaders, business leaders, and IT leaders. So it's role based. So when you subscribe to our platform, you can give it to a business leader, and the business leader can say, I care about HIPAA. It's a regulation for patient health data. So I need to make sure all the information we're using has this policy turned on. And a policy could be as simple as who's accessing the information, right? So when a business leader is empowered with that through an application, they don't need to go and work with IT. They don't need to wait for IT to understand their requirements. That's really a modern application. However, if a security person needs to be ready for an audit, they could also log into our system and get a different view of the data, a different view of the environment, because they need to create the audit. They need to show evidence that, hey, we do have policies that are turned on for HIPAA, for example. So when you create an application that really services these multiple roles, organizations really say to us, we can use your system as a mission critical system, and we can rely on your application. So, that's really the work we're doing. We've enhanced our analytics capabilities, right? Everyone now just wants analytics so they can make better decisions. You expect the software to actually know where all the signals, all the risk is, and just tell you the analysis. So we've enhanced that aspect, and that also is helping us reach new business leaders or digital workplace leaders, which are the type of leaders that just want to get results to the business and really, concentrate on outcomes, right? I don't really care about your app has 3 more buttons or 3 more switches or 3 more configuration settings. I care about the outcomes your product drives. And so when you can show that in the product stack, it shows you that you're staying at the forefront of how to build the best systems.
It's interesting how you mentioned that different people in the organization of your customers have used for the systems that you build. I also noticed when I was looking through some of the customers in your client base, one thing that immediately jumped out was how diverse the industries were. Your customers were coming from all sorts of different sectors and industries. I'm curious how you manage to maintain context of those industries when building systems, because I imagine some things will be common, but for other things to be really useful, you have to have the context of that industry. How do you strike that balance between leveraging existing frameworks across industries, but also making sure you have enough context of the industry in which your client operates?
Yeah, so context is really important. We are fortunate. The other benefit we have is the experience curve. We've because we've been working cross industry over time. What happens is you have a lot of friends that are cross industry, right? You have not just one pharmaceutical you're working with. some of the best pharmaceutical companies. So there's a benefit in that we've been around for a while, right? I think, for a while, people say, "Oh, you've been around for 20 years. Why haven't we heard of you?" Well, we were private for a while, number one. For our listeners, AvePoint just became a public company 3 years ago. We just passed our 3-year anniversary. But where we're not so sort of unknown is with customers. We have these organizations that have worked with us, and we've seen their transformation, their journey. So context comes from the base that we have, and it is cross industry. We have in our investor deck slide a place where we show you how balanced our AR contribution is. But that's not the main area where we get I think the insights and knowledge to build. The next thing we've done is when we started building the sort of roles inside the organization, we wanted to make sure our pre-sale tech team was well versed. So over the years, we've been able to retain as well as acquire the talent that is cross industry, individuals that come from different industries: healthcare, financial services, retail, manufacturing. It's important to know that language of the industry. It's important to communicate your value proposition the way that business understands their challenges. But then the other thing we did notice, and you mentioned it, there are some common challenges across all industries. I'll give you an example: erosion of trust and reputation, right? Across all industries, failure in any of these areas can lead to a significant loss in customer and stakeholder trust, which is difficult to develop, and it's very costly to rebuild. And erosion of trust and reputation happens when you have a data breach. Erosion of trust happens when your workers don't feel that they're adequately empowered with the right applications to do their job, right? When the organization is too manual, it's too slow. So when we go in and talk to clients, we're asking them, when you're making this transformation, why don't we find the most optimal way for you to deliver IT back to the business? Let's find the most optimal way. That way, your information workers can actually focus on the work, which is probably taking care of your product or taking care of your customers or your partners, your supply chain partners. And so let's not, disrupt the trust. How do you build trust? You make sure that when they're using data, they can rely on the data. That when the data is actually being shared, they're not concerned with, did I just share a highly confidential file with, Mobeen? Maybe I shouldn't have. I shouldn't be worried about that if I'm focused on trying to close, a new contract. So we work extensively on those challenges, and those are cross industry. So we come in and we explain to clients that they should really think about that type of trust reputation. The second is financial consequences, which is also common across any industry. Financial impact of data breaches. Non-compliance penalties. Every industry has them. Operational disruption. We've seen that most recently with the CrowdStrike outage that we saw. These could be substantial, and they could affect both the bottom line and long-term sustainability of the organization. That matters to CIOs. When I am out on the field working with the C-suite, specifically CIOs or chief security officers, they're concerned that if they can't really show impact to the bottom line by making sure they're bringing in a vendor that can consolidate other vendors, that can, interoperate capabilities, then they're challenged and they're going to have financial consequences. Not to mention, they could, be exposed to data breaches because they don't have the adequate systems, the adequate governance model in place. And then operational inefficiency is the third, which is ineffective data management due to poor governance and resilience. And this can lead to operational inefficiencies. I'll give you an example. A lot of first-party products, whether using Zoom or Teams, or if you are using Slack, for example, these are very common in organizations for productivity and collaboration. You need to create these workspaces. So for our listeners, a workspace, it's nothing but if Mobeen and I are going to share some files in preparation for this podcast, we might say, I'll create a Slack channel or a Teams channel, and I'm going to share a file with you. I'm going to allow Mobeen as a guest user to access my tenant, my AvePoint tenant. So when I share information with you, I need to create this workspace. I don't know what policies I should put on the workspace. I don't know. I need to go check with compliance, my legal team. I'm about to do a podcast. I think we're going to talk about 4 questions, but I don't know what the policy is to govern the communication you and I are going to have. I shouldn't have to worry about that as a frontline worker, for example. So when you create the workspace, what if when we create the workspace, automatically it knew that because I'm in this case, public speaking on a few topics on behalf of AvePoint, it should create that workspace with a policy that says, let's make sure that Mario is not sharing MMPI information. That'd be great, right? So our system improves the efficiency of how workspaces are created because we can package all these policies at the start. And doing this at scale is powerful. We have customers that have 120,000 employees, 750,000 workspaces. How are you going to create 750,000 workspaces for a variety of business needs from one central system and track it all and watch it all and monitor it? That's what we focus on. That's what our platform does. And that's why, we're able to develop that context because these are common across industries. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective.
Absolutely. Excellent. And one thing I wanted to share with you, Mario, at Wisdom Tree, we work with a firm called Bessemer Venture Partners to identify exciting cloud companies like AvePoint. And something I saw in their recent 2024 State of the Cloud report, they said the report was titled, "The Legacy Cloud is Dead, Long Live AI Cloud." And you can imagine where my question is going at. Now, of course, at Wisdom Tree, we've been asserting that AI stands to impact every industry. But I imagine this is particularly true when we're talking about data, software, the sorts of things that AvePoint is doing. So give us your take on the impact that AI is having on your industry and indeed AvePoint's business.
So, there's it's I think the impact comes in several ways. I think there's an opportunity to change the behavior of how we work. So I think there's going to be an exciting opportunity that efficiency could be achieved. Um, many have coined that, oh, this a lot of these commercial AI products are really nothing but great college interns or assistants, but that's good. That's a good place to start, right? If I could very quickly, comb through my inbox because I'm using a commercial AI product to summarize it for me, that's great. Maybe it saves me 5 minutes today, 10 minutes. So I think we're starting there. A lot of the efficiencies you see are summary of meeting notes, highlighting what was important in the conversation you and I had for 45 minutes so that I can send it off to, my colleagues and they just hear the most important sound bites. I think that changes the way we think about how technology can, you know, make our experience better in working, with our colleagues, customers, partners. So that's what we're seeing on one side. On the other side, AI gives you an opportunity to tap into this massive volume of data that everybody has. That's only growing, right? I mean, we've heard for a while, right? Remember, I'm not sure if you heard, data is the new currency, right? Many talks around privacy when GDPR first came out a few years ago. Data is the new currency. We must protect data privacy because data continues to grow, right? You go to a concert today, how many, petabytes of data are being created just at a concert from photos and images. And so the question then is, well, we have all this information. What can we do with it? So AI, I think, is an opportunity to unlock the value of that information and unlock it in a way in which it could transform your products and your business. So what I see in conversations with organizations, very sophisticated organizations, very large organizations across these industries, is that what they're looking for is how can this new revolution of AI transform the way I deliver my product, transform the service I'm providing today. Underneath that, yes, there's obviously how can AI make me more efficient? How can AI improve my operating efficiency? At AvePoint, we needed to do two things. We needed to, as a provider of technology, start, really shipping AI capabilities in our platform, which we did. But the second thing is we needed to, as a global organization that really has, you know, a very complex business in terms of all the customers and demographics that we need to service. How do we use AI? How do we become more efficient? So we immediately did a couple of things. We launched an AI program that both incorporated, um, solutions we're going to build for productization, as well as technologies we're going to use to change the way we work. So what do? We did a couple of things. We first off, we're you can't go out and preach this if you're not using the technologies. So we did a pilot of Microsoft Copilot. We needed to understand commercial off the shelf Copilot. How is that going to behave in the environment, and how is that going to be regulated and managed? In that experience, we learned a couple of things. We've seen the opportunity to change the efficiency at the individual level, right? Slightly, right? Reduce a couple of hours a week because you're able to move faster on information. You're able to, cultivate information, summarize it, and get a little smarter in all this information that's coming at you, which is the other problem we have, right? We have too much data coming to us, too much noise. So we saw efficiencies there, and we saw also an opportunity for us to curate some of the data that we already have. And that curation started with, do we have our governance policies in place so that when we turn on Copilot, Mario's data doesn't get exposed to Mobeen because maybe I have sensitive data there. So we did deploy a governance framework. Obviously, we use our own products, and so we went through that exercise. And what we noticed is that there's a change management aspect that's part of improving the organization's ability to adopt AI. That has nothing to do with technology, right? It's about processes and it's about people. And so you have to develop a champions network. You have to develop people that are actually going to say, no, listen, this is actually a good tool. Let me show you how you can actually do that differently. So there's a little bit of that going on. So that pilot has really given us an opportunity to understand this is more than just technology. It's about a cultural change. It's about a perspective change. The user experience is going to change, right? Instead of drag, drop, click here, click there, how do you actually create smart prompts? How do you actually, you know, ask the information in a way in which you find it valuable? So we're doing that. The second thing we did was we also wanted to really curate some of the data that is proprietary to AvePoint to improve some of our team's ability to service our customers. An example of that was, um, customer presentations and pitches. How can we reduce the cost of customer acquisition? Well, maybe I don't have to have three people on a first call. Maybe I have one person and just arm that person with all the information so they can give a pretty good 20-minute pitch on the product capabilities. So now we built marketing team did a great job with the name Chat AVPT. We took our ticker symbol and they called it Chat AVPT. And what it simply does is a series of editors. One is a pitch coach. You open it up in your browser and you say, how I'm about to meet Mobeen on this incredible Next Big Thing podcast. I need to give him a 5-minute pitch on what we're doing in the healthcare organization. Boom. As soon as you type that in, it goes into our product, corpus of information, and it comes back with a pitch. And it says, here's what you should say to Mobeen. Don't forget to say this to him. Don't forget to say this. Don't forget to mention this. We have a new product coming out. The salesperson doesn't have to go ask the marketing teams for all this information. It's all now curated. So think about the time we've saved there. Most companies have sat on legacy taxonomy structures for many years because changing how your data is classified is a big challenge. Well, there's an opportunity to use AI to actually improve classification. So we did ship a capability in one of our solutions in the platform. We're seeing some really good response from clients, and we're just getting started. So, to bring this back full circle to your question, I think we do use AI to transform the way we're going to market, to transform the way we're helping clients, but we're also going through the experience ourselves so that we can have empathy for what organizations are going to go through so that ultimately we could build, products that hopefully help them through that, period and that transformation.
Another thing, Mario, I was looking at IBM's cost of a data breach report recently, which stated that the average global cost of a data breach in 2024 was almost 5 million US dollars.
Hmm.
And this was a nearly 10% increase compared to last year. So, what they're saying is that data breaches are costing organizations more each year. Now, of course, nobody wants to be the person in the organization responsible for costing their organization 5 million USD or even more. And of course, no organization wants to leave those vulnerabilities in place. And we know uh, AvePoint focuses a lot on data governance and security, but I'd be curious to know why is it such a challenge to protect data and ensure its good governance and security, and what sort of things does AvePoint do to make progress on that endeavor?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mentioned earlier that um, the challenge of the workspaces, the example I gave, most organizations are empowering their workforce to collaborate on data, and they have certain procedures. They'll say, here's a site where you can store the data for your department. Here's a communication technology you can use for chatting with your colleagues, for starting meetings. Here's another technology you can use for managing the documents. Here's another. And so what happens is, and most of these technologies, by the way, today are SaaS services, right? Because that's the other thing that has been introduced into the IT portfolio, which is the SaaS industry. It's been great. I don't have to manage. I don't have to maintain the software. I'll just subscribe to the service. And as a buyer, you also can jump out of the service, right? Maybe I will renew, maybe I won't. So the digital workplace environment today, I think, is quite complex, and solving a horizontal problem like a policy across all my data is not easy to do. Most of the products you're going to use as first party will tell you they can do governance, you can secure the data, but it's mostly centered around their system, right? Because our point of view from the beginning, as I mentioned in the opening remarks, was always about multi-tenant, multi-instances, multi-data sources. We've always designed the security model of the platform to think about roles and to also look across different data sets and say, if I'm going to do a policy from the AvePoint platform, it needs to be a policy that works across all these different applications. Fortunately for us, as Microsoft took their set of applications and created the M365 services portfolio, that is what it is. It is a set of really services or cloud applications, right? And so as data is moving in and out based on the user behavior, you do need to think about how does a policy work across that. So what we do is we help these organizations think about the security from the outset by saying, let's build a governance framework so you have policies for your data, policies that fit your industry, policies that are easy to understand, a system that can then give you a risk matrix and say to you, you have risk in these areas because there's information exposed to guest accounts. There's a lot of companies that hire consultants, right? And they have guest accounts. And oftentimes the cleanup effort of those guest accounts is not complete. It's not visible. You don't see it, right? You deactivate the account, but you don't realize that, that account probably lingers there and the access control is still available throughout the system. So as your organization grows and uses more and more systems, you do not go back and constantly have visibility over the fabric of how these applications work. Our system is really designed to show you and expose all of that and say, look, we've seen here all these dead accounts. You don't really need them. We're going to clean them up for you. And when we clean them up for you, we're also going to go and remove all those access controls across all these applications. So you don't have to do that. And we're going to give you a record of that so that you can actually pass your audit. So you can actually show evidence that it's done. And we're going to show you also where policies are no longer adequate because your business behavior has changed, because the way information is being shared has changed. And we do that because we have visibility in how users are working on the information. So we come back and we say to companies, and maybe this is a good way for the listeners to understand some of this, three main areas. Prioritizing data security from the outset. Look, in AI systems, they thrive on data, right? That's the whole point. So making data security is a foundational element in your AI strategy. So that's number one. So let's make data foundation, the curation of data, the quality of data foundation to your AI strategy. From the outset, let's go and implement these robust data security measures that include encryption, access control, continuous monitoring to protect sensitive information, and unauthorized access, so that when you have a breach, at least you know how to contain the breach, you know how to remediate the breach, you know the impact of the breach. By the way, that also helps with the fine, right? And so if you ensure that your AI, strategy has this perspective, you're going to not mishandle data. So our application is giving you the capabilities to do that. The second point, which is establish, clear data governance framework. So AI protects, or maybe to said better, AI really will project vast amounts of data to the different, tools that are being used. Because if you and I turn on Copilot, maybe I'll use it 10 times today, maybe you use it 30 times today. Every time you're using it, it's running a query. So it's projecting data constantly. And so how do we make sure it's reliable? We need to think about also our storage layer, right? Because you're carrying a lot of data. So maybe there's some data that's, from 3 years ago. Should that data be surfaced in your query, in your prompt? Well, that depends. What does it depend on? It depends on how that data has been classified. It depends on what the retention schedule for the data was. And it also depends on when the organization made a decision that data was no longer, tier one data that's available to the organization because it's relevant. Here's an example. You put out a corporate policy that says, this year, we're going to offer people 2 days to work from home, right? We saw that during COVID. But what happens in a year from now if your organization changes and says, no, we don't really like the 2-year policy. We need to go to 3 days in the office or whatever. But if a new member of the employee comes in and says, yeah, I don't know what the corporate policy is for working from home. Let me look it up. And inadvertently, we show that person a document from the old corporate policy. Well, they might not show up to work and be like, what are you talking about? I did follow the rules. I read the corporate manual because the AI told me. You know what people don't realize is you could come back to the organization and say, look, I used your tool to search your information and it gave me information that I took action on. So why am I accountable? Why am I accountable to that? And if you create this friction with your workforce, it becomes very difficult to, sustain an organization that can be, really productive. And these are just really small examples, but they are examples that matter. And they're examples that really affect companies, and they're real examples. They're challenges that companies face today. So the governance framework that we speak about includes setting clear data ownership, includes data quality standards, and that we can show you the data lineage. An example of that would be, by the way, that document should receive this retention because it was from the old corporate policy that was active for 2021. It's no longer active. And so the retention policy says we should move it to cold storage. And if we move it to cold storage through the software, by the way, this is all done through the software, you don't have to worry that when you're using Copilot, that document is going to show up. And organizations will be like, that's great. How do I configure that? It's easy. You just go into our product, you create a policy, and you deploy it, and it's all done. So these are the kinds of things that are really foundational. And again, the why is because proper governance ensures that the AI models are built on high quality data, compliant data, and it really enhances the reliability. And of course, you improve the performance of your organization and you improve the way you service your clients. My examples could also apply to organizations that have information for, like in retail, we're working with companies that are actually using a lot of this corporate information to determine what merchandise is selling and what merchandise I should remove from the shelf or not. So these are real impacts that are felt even in industries like retail, for example. So the last I would mention is that if you don't also have resilience in your AI system, then there's also going to be disruption. And here's why. Now, let's say you go through some adoption and you have some of the workforce using your AI tools because now it's relying on good corporate data. You think they're going to want to go back to the old way of working? Do you and I want to go back to, as much as we love hearing that sound of dial-up, do we really want to go back and sit there and wait 5 minutes for the browser to load? No, we're going to kill the browser and be like, I can't use this system. I don't have time for this. we're going to go through this transformation that's not just about the technology, but also about the way people are expecting the results. And the results matter. And I think the results are really going to be, important. And so resiliency means that you think about redundancy so that you avoid disruption, especially during cyber attacks. Especially, you don't want to lose data, so you do want to have, data sets. You have copies of your data, so that if let's say there's a data breach, right? Here's an example. Chat AVPT, I mentioned it before. What if suddenly we have a data breach? No longer is my product information available. No longer can my salesperson go out today and do the pitch. That's bad for AvePoint. We can't sell software. So how do I create a redundancy layer? Well, maybe I should have a backup of that. Maybe I should have a system that is monitoring and knows that if we have a data breach on that data set, we'll just restore with another, copy of the data, a gold copy. Like that kind of continuity. Well, some may say, well, why is that innovative? That's the way people have been thinking about data since the beginning of time. Have a copy of the data so you don't lose it. The reality is that yes and no. I think what the cloud, computing brought to many was this idea that, well, it's in the cloud. It's safe, right? It's in the cloud. It's in the first party cloud, so it's good. Well, that's true, but also what if you have a data center outage? What if you have a region outage? What if you have, the kinds of attacks that could bring a data center down, or even more specifically, corrupt a database? These happen. All the hyperscalers have had outages in the last 6 years of some type or another. So it's really important that the resiliency is also done in the way the application is interacting with the user. So the resiliency we provide is by avoiding that downtime. We give you a quick way to recover items. We give you a quick way to pull specifically the information you're looking for. We have organizations that have come to us and said, we need to do an audit on a user. We're investigating a user and we need to find all the data that Mobeen has ever used in the 4 years he's been working with us. Well, we need to then have a system that can go look at not just the information that's active, but information that's probably in our cold storage. Through our application, you can do that kind of discovery. And this is a data subject request discovery that's necessary for compliance officers.
Mario, if we look ahead and as we draw this fascinating conversation to a close, I'm curious to know, as you look ahead to what's on the horizon in terms of your own career, in terms of where the industry is headed, in terms of where AI is going, and what's in store for AvePoint. Uh, what sort of technological trends are you closely tracking and excited about? And what sort of things do you think your customers and indeed other people interested in all the potential and all the benefits of the sorts of things we've talked about that these things can bring to their organizations? What sort of things should they be keeping their eyes on and paying attention to?
Yeah, it's there's so many things to say, and I think we're, as I said earlier, grateful. Well, I'm grateful, and we should be grateful. This is an incredible time to be alive. Not only because we've seen so much transformation, but because it's an opportunity of discovery, both on a personal level as well as discovering new ways to help organizations advance their need to bring more products to market and improve, you know, just create a more equitable society. Frankly, I think on the technical side, it's going to be interesting the way, as I mentioned before, the user experience changes. I think the user experience is really interesting to me. Think about your own behavioral change once you became super dependent on your mobile device. I don't think, anyone leaves their home without their mobile device. It probably changed your own feeling of what's your role in society. Like how do you coexist? We have seen also the impact the social platforms have created, the industries they've created, right? It's incredible, the markets they've created. So that all comes from a change in user experience, a change in access to information. That's what the internet gave us, right? Suddenly you could. I remember that feeling when you first went to Google and you're like, oh, I can just type, I can just like ask it something and it's going to give me something back. Well, we've magnified that now, right? We've seen all these incredible, videos that have been released from the work Google's doing with Gemini. It's amazing. So I think it's still in this incredible period of discovery. And so we just must remain open to the idea that we just have to get comfortable with change. And that's fine. Like change is good, right? So change is really good because if we are open to change, we're going to be willing to go through the early steps of trying something that may seem difficult when five steps down the road, it actually will feel easier than what I was doing yesterday. And that's this user interaction, user experience with information. So that's one. The second is it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know if you've heard this, but a long time ago, I was at a presentation from a CIO, and it was in a financial services organization, very very successful one, right? A global organization. And he said, "We're not really a financial services company. We're a tech company delivering financial services." And it was interesting just to hearing the twist of that, because they knew they needed to use technology to deliver better services. So they said, we got to get good at technology. It's no longer about the numbers, it's about the technology. Well, maybe something similar is going to happen. Maybe it's about, you know, next generation of big companies are going to be the ones that have the most power, computing power. Maybe it's about energy, right? Maybe it's about who can give us the most energy so we can then get the information we want. When you run, you probably know this, and maybe some of the listeners, when you run a query today, the tokens, that's an expensive call. You're running, GPUs behind, and so at some point, do technology companies turn into energy companies? Right? Do they say we need to understand how to manage energy so we can deliver really good technology? Perhaps. Um, when I think about those leaps, I do get super excited, and it's inspiring. And it is a chance to make a tangible impact, whether through small everyday interactions or through larger community driven efforts. Honestly, on a personal level, what drives me is the possibility to contribute to create a more equitable world. I have the privilege today of working with companies across different countries and regions, and it's nice to see that we do have all, despite our histories and our differences, a common playing ground, which is we just want to solve problems. We just want to improve things. Um, and so with every person, there's the reality to breathe and create spaces where everyone has a chance to contribute and grow. And if you're building products or you're delivering a service or you're, creating a podcast, that's what we all should be doing, which is just create a space where everyone has a chance to contribute and grow from listening to the conversation, or contribute a thought or a perspective or an experience they've had. So Mobeen, it's the idea that being part of, that change, of knowing that the work I do and perhaps the work you do and others, how big or small it may be, it is moving us closer to that vision. Because there's so much also, just unpleasant things that happen. So whatever we can do to bring more, pleasant things to everyone's lives, to me, I think is time well spent. So hopefully we've done that in this conversation.
I hope so too. And that was a fascinating set of thoughts to leave uh, our audience with, and explore technology and all its impact further. But before we let you go, Mario, I would love for you to just share with our audience, if they are interested in learning more about your work and AvePoint, where can they go on the website, social media,
Mhm.
and so forth?
Yes, thank you. Before I mentioned the sources, thank you for having me and allowing us, this opportunity to have a good conversation on these topics. We're putting a lot of content out. Please visit, for your listeners, avepoint.com/resources. We can show you there not only what we're doing in the industry, where we're going to be. We do show up in many industry conferences, but also we're pushing more information and sharing what we're learning. We're about to actually publish a really good case study on our Copilot experience. So when we have it, I'll send you over the link. Hopefully, listeners can understand what it's like from the inside out. So definitely visit there. Listeners can also listen to podcasts like this. We have a podcast which is called Shift Happens. We talk often about the shifts in not only the industry, shifts in culture, the impacts of shift at the professional level. And like yourself, we feel it's important to dedicate several minutes to conversations with leaders and industry practitioners, because the more we share, the more we learn. So that's AvePoint.com/shift happens, which is shift happens would be all one word. And then you can always find me on LinkedIn. We are very active on LinkedIn, and we'd love to obviously provide any more information or color to any listener that wants to learn more. But I do appreciate your time today, Mobeen, and the rest of your team for providing this opportunity and supporting this podcast.
Well, I have to say it's an excellent name for a podcast, Shift Happens, and it's been an absolute privilege to have you on the show, Mario, today. And we have to at this point, we have to just thank our audience for tuning in. We hope everyone enjoyed this episode of The Next Big Thing, Megatrends podcast. If you want to hear more from us, please subscribe on whichever platform you're using, and please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating. You can follow Wisdom Tree on LinkedIn or X, and also follow me, Mobeen Tahir, on those platforms. If you want to learn more about megatrends, please visit Wisdom Tree's website. Join us again for another interesting topic next time. We'll see you then.